So as advertised, what I'd like to do is, I think I'm going to pull up this share screen, and I want to share the sound, and here we go. And I presume you can see the PowerPoint. So this is a PowerPoint prepared actually a few years ago when COVID was really, making Seders very difficult and very awkward. Actually, I have a bunch of people coming right now. So there's a wonderful scholar, Sarah Bunim-Benor, who is a scholar of Jewish languages, and there's something called the Jewish Language Project. And I think, I distributed and will again in my email that I sent out tonight, the link to get this. It's a PowerPoint deck of slides about Passover around the world in different traditions. And in order to make it reasonable to try and do in one session, I have cut out a bunch of the slides, but the link that I'm sending has all of them. And it's just really interesting. And as I was starting to say with a few of you as we were getting into the program, let's see, somebody posted something on chat. It's Jane's birthday. Happy birthday, Jane.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Cheryl.
you.
And thank you, Cheryl, for letting us know. So I often get a comment from people who say, well, we're not religious, and for us, Judaism is a culture. And when I do that, I hasten to point out that Judaism is many things, but I wouldn't call it a culture because there are so many different Jewish cultures within Judaism. Technically, Judaism is both a religion and a nation. And one of the things that this presentation will highlight is different renditions, particularly of Jewish songs and customs in many different languages. So I hope you enjoy it. And I'm going to kind of fly through some of the slides that are just key elements of a Jewish Seder, simply because I can't resist. So there's a little introduction that, it says the presentation has most of the traditional Ashkenazi Haggadah in Hebrew and English, as well as videos, text, and traditions around the world. You can tailor them to your own Seder, which of course is what I did during COVID. And then there's even more sections at the very end of the presentation, which I won't, present to you tonight, but it is part of the slide package that you get. So there's a traditional prayer called the Shehechianu that we offer when good things happen repetitiously. I mean, Shehechianu has become kind of an all-purpose good times blessing, but technically you're supposed to say it periodically, like once a year, like for a holiday, when something good happens. So here is a Seder plate. I was going to say traditional until I saw the orange. And so as it's developed over time, most of us will have the beitza, the egg, and romaine lettuce, two kinds of sort of bitter lettuce, chazeret romaine lettuce, and maror bitter herbs, and charoset, fruit and nut mixture, karpas, parsley. And then some people are replacing the shank bone with something else to be a little more vegan or vegetarian. And it's actually interesting. I don't think I have it anywhere in this presentation, but Chabad uses chicken necks for their Passover Seder plate. And I'm pretty sure there is a Kabbalistic thing going on with the chicken neck, but I don't know what it is. I should do more research on that. And then some of you may have heard of the tradition of putting an orange on the Seder plate. If you've heard of that tradition, wave at me. I'm just curious. Yeah, okay, lots of people. And the story goes back that supposedly the story is not true, but it's a good story, so it's worth repeating anyway, that
You don't care.
when people started talking about making women rabbis, someone said that a woman has as much business being a rabbi as an orange has on a Seder plate. So people started putting oranges on Seder plate. And Suzanne, we actually hear you, so I'm going to mute you. Susan, sorry.
A practical reason for putting the chicken neck on the Seder plate would be so everyone can check to see if you slurred the chicken correctly.
Okay, I have no comment on that. Okay. And in addition, to the traditional plate. There's salt water, which represents tears, matzah and wine, 4 cups of wine, Elijah's cup. Typically 3 matzahs in which we break the middle matzah. And we're going to see some examples of traditional prayers for that. And then this is just kind of fun. I haven't really spent time studying it, but here's a Greek plate, and they have vinegar and salt. And here is one from Uzbekistan, presented slightly differently. Lemon juice, interesting. Libya, trying to see if there's anything sort of unique going on in Libya. And Yemen, they do, I guess, the whole table. Korban means sacrifice, a meat stew. That's interesting. And have, looks like vegetables, parsley and shredded beet salad, and parsnip. So that's kind of interesting. And of course, we will typically light candles. And one of the things that's going on in a Seder is the word Seder means order. So the Seder always has a very specific order. And again, it's always an interesting question of how much you actually do during the Seder. Oh God, let's see. Cheryl is posting something interesting. The Hebrew word for neck is harophep, rearranged, that spells Pharaoh. So the chicken neck sits on the Seder plate and doesn't budge, as a small reminder of Pharaoh and his stubbornness. Very interesting. Thank you. By the way, there is a really, I find very good series on Netflix, which I think is called The Testament of Moses. It's I think 3 sessions of about an hour and 20 minutes each. And the interesting thing is it tells the story of Moses's life as told in the Bible, but also, sorry, with a lot of material from Midrash, which is interesting. And also, even more interesting for me, is material from the Quran. There's a lot of commentary by scholars and clergy, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim. And the material from the Quran is really interesting. So one of the things that's in the Quran, which you probably have never heard of, is that in the Quran, Haman shows up as one of Pharaoh's advisors. And that's really a pretty significant part in the show itself. So anyway, I got a kick out of that, and I encourage you to take a look at it.
This particular pharaoh or a pharaoh?
I don't know what you're talking about now.
There were many pharaohs over.
Yeah, we're talking about Pharaoh in the time of Moses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The pharaoh. So in other words, not the pharaoh in the time that Haman lived in our teachings.
Yeah. No. This is in the Quran. Pharaoh is Haman is an officer in Pharaoh's court. And of course, Jews looking at the Quran say, well, this is just clearly another example where the Quran got things mixed up. And of course, Muslims looking at the Bible say, well, here's another example of where the Jews and Christians got things mixed up.
The other possibility that I've read, and I have no idea if this is true, is that it's possible that the word Haman wasn't a specific person, it was a job title, and that there were many people who held that position over the centuries. So it could be that both versions are correct.
It's possible, but yes, it's possible. I don't know. Okay, so we say blessings over the wine, and in the first blessing, it's a full kiddush over not only, blessing the wine, but blessing the entire day. And, if different version, whether it's Friday night or Saturday night. And then we we wash our hands without a blessing. And I always observe that the Seder includes 2 meals. One is an intellectual meal, the telling of the story, and one is a physical meal. So that's the reason, at least one of my teachers gives, for washing your hands without a blessing, which is to say, we're about to partake in an intellectual meal. So we wash our hands to remind us that it's a meal, but we don't say the blessing because we're not actually eating anything at this stage. And then because we're suffering from blessing anxiety, we grab a sprig of parsley or green vegetable and say the blessing over fruits of the earth, Borei Pri Ha'adama. And then there's a tradition of splitting the middle matzah in two and hiding of the split matzah. We hide the larger piece to use for the afikomen. There are lots of examples or lots of ideas about why we break the middle matzah. And one I got a lot out of my teacher Mordechai Finley, who said that the matzahs represent redemption. The bottom matzah represents the dimension of the past. The top matzah represents the redemption in the future. The middle matzah represents redemption in our own day, and it's certainly not complete. So we break the matzah, and redemption in our own day is hidden. So we hide the afikomen, and we look to the children to bring about redemption. Now we get our first little musical entree. So there are blessings and chanting for this section, and just wave at me when you can hear it. So this is Syrian Jews.
So this is a custom that I actually look forward to at the Seder every year, where we take the middle masa of the 3 masot that are placed on the Seder table, and we break it into 2 pieces. We take the smaller piece is broken into the shape of the letter Vav, and the bigger piece is broken into a Dalet. It looks like a hay, actually. There's Kabbalistic significance for that, for the names of God. So you have it looking like a hay. Like the tefillin almost. And so the smaller piece is placed back between the matzot, and then the larger piece is taken here like we're doing now, and this will become the afikoman. But before we go and we hide it and we continue on with the telling of the story, we have a little bit of a ritual that we do, a little bit of a part of the telling of the story where we really act it out. So the leader of the Seder is going to do what I'm about to do right now. Take the masa in this napkin and places it in the right hand over the left shoulder of the participants of the Seder and waves it while singing this verse. Mish'arotam serurot besimlotam al shichmam ubenei Yisrael asu kidbar Moshe, which means their remaining possessions tied up in their bags on their shoulders, and the children of Israel did as Moses commanded. So we're acting out this moment in the Exodus where the children of Israel were leaving with their possessions over their shoulders. And then we do a little skit in Arabic. Minjeh.
Mimisraim.
Wen Raih.
Yerushalayim.
And so that means, where are you coming from? Mimisraim, from Egypt. Where are you going? Yerushalayim. And we go around on the Seder table, and we do this with the Masa to every participant until we've gone around to every single person. And then we reach the next step of the Seder, which is the Halachmanya.
Oops. Let's see. I think no, that was Yachatz. Okay. So that's what this say. This is actually the text of what he just said. So they're asking, where are you coming from? From Mitzrayim, from Egypt. And where are you going? To Jerusalem. And it's in Arabic, and it shouldn't, surprise us or shock us that there are Seder traditions in Arabic, because many Jews, the Mizrahi Jews, are living in Muslim lands, so they are speaking Arabic. And indeed, the Jews of Morocco and Sephardic, well, I don't know if it's generally true of Sephardic Jews, but certainly in Morocco, when someone says, are you going to the whatever tomorrow? We might say in English, God willing. In Hebrew, we might say Bezrat Hashem, with the help of God. And in the Jews in Morocco would say Inshallah, which means with Allah's, if Allah wills it. And of course, Allah is just an Arabic word for El or Elohim, and we'll actually see this a few times again. So here's a great illustration of a very different tradition. Morocco. then the Sonia always talks about remembering that at Seders, and Sonia's family absolutely remember doing that. So the next stage is pointing to the matzah and saying halach ma'anya. And actually, I think I don't know if it was Monday. I think Monday, somebody asked what sections of Jewish tradition are still in Aramaic or are in Aramaic, and halach ma'anya is Aramaic. So the word for bread, you probably know, is lechem, but in Aramaic it's lachma. And a typical marker of Aramaic words are aleph at the end. So here, halach ma'anya, the achlu, avatana, this would be avotenu, our ancestors. But again, aleph at the end are typically markers of Aramaic. We see that in the Kaddish as well. Okay, I would say we are generally familiar with the 4 questions. I always like to point out that the 4 questions is really one question. The only question is, why is this night different from all other nights? And then explains 4 ways in which tonight is different. But this is definitely in Hebrew, not in Aramaic. So here's a version in Yiddish. Very different than any of it I've ever heard. Oop, I want to move it so we don't watch.
Es mir kommt zehn aber die Nacht wenn Pesach es mir nur die zweite Kasche alle Nacht in die ganze es mir alle Grenzen aber die Nacht wenn Pesach es mir nur bittere Grenzen.
So I'm not going to play all of these or all the entire video here. As far as I can tell, certainly when they say Manish Tanah Halayla Hazeh, that's Hebrew. But then when they're singing the chorus, I can't quite tell what they're saying. And some of these slides, they will actually post what they're saying. But it certainly doesn't sound like Hebrew to me. So I think the specific things about, on all of the nights we eat all kinds of bread, tonight only matzah, and so on, that seems like it's in Yiddish. But the chorus is actually Hebrew. Whoops. And then, of course, we start to tell the story about being slaves in Egypt and the stories of the 4 sons. So this is, again, the intellectual meal that we are eating. And, the wise son, the evil and wicked son, the innocent, and the one who does not know to ask. And then we lift up a cup and we talk about how in each generation people stand to destroy us, but the Holy One, blessed be He, sorry for the gender specificity, rescues us from their hand. And I know you're all familiar with the 10 plagues, and actually what that show on Moses does with the plagues is actually quite interesting the way they portray it. And of course, we remove a drop of wine from our full cup with a mention of every plague. Some of these things take on increased relevance even with today's news, because we don't rejoice over the killing of innocents. And of course, we have Dayenu, and I think I have a couple of Dayenus. So one of the things I want to point out with
Except
Dayenu.
on Purim.
Sorry?
I said except on Purim.
Yes, that's true. So although I wouldn't see, well, yeah, interesting question whether they're innocents or not, but that's another question. I would say every time I do Dayenu, I do a Dayenu rap, and I'm going to try and restrain myself. But we talk about Hotzionu Mitzrayim. We talk about Natan Lanu et HaShabbat, Natan Lanu et HaTorah, and so on. But in fact, you should just be aware, if you're not aware, there are a lot of verses. Had he taken us out of Egypt, not made judgments upon them, Dayenu, it would have been enough for us. Had he made judgments upon them and not made judgments on their gods, Dayenu. And it just goes on and on and on and on. This is one reason why if you ever attend a very traditional Seder, it will go on for 2, 3, 4 hours. But not one of mine, and it keeps going on. So there's many verses to Dayenu. And so here's a very modern example. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Maccabees. They are fun.
Ilu ilu hotzianu hotzianu mi mitzrayim hotzianu mi mitzrayim dayenu 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 Ilu ilu koralanu etayam dayenu 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 Ilu ilu achilanu etaman dayenu 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 hey 2 3 4 ilu natalanu
So you can see where this one's going. A lot of different, and it's only a minute, 20 seconds into a little over 4 minutes. So, if you want to see the rest of it, enjoy. But also just Google, the Maccabees. I think there's another one called 613. There's a bunch of different groups that do this kind of thing. You are familiar, Rabbi Gamliel talked about that. This is actually in the Mishnah, that anyone who has not said these 3 things on Pesach has not fulfilled his obligation. Talk about the Pesach sacrifice, matzah and maror, and then he goes on to explain them. And of course, one of the things that's mentioned in that show on Moses, and I always talk about this, that every one of the plagues were really directed at gods of Egypt. So the Nile was a god of Egypt, turned into blood. There was a frog-headed god of Egypt. The sun was a god of Egypt, and of course, darkness attacks that. But also the lamb, the Paschal lamb, was a god of Egypt, Aries. And slaughtering the lamb is a direct attack on a god of Egypt. And the fact that you had to publicly display the blood on the doorpost makes it a very public display of who's Jewish and who is willing to basically say we are betting on our God and not the gods of Egypt. Jane.
I'm curious to know in reading this that 3 things on Pesach has not fulfilled his obligation, and that's the Pesach sacrifice, matzah, and maror. And yet I know that matzah is only considered Pesach matzah if it's flour and water. What about those people who can't have wheat?
Okay,
I
so you're asking
that can't be called matzah.
Okay, so you're asking actually a different question. This is Rabbi Gamliel, who basically says you have to discuss this. He's not really even talking about eating it yet, but you have to discuss it. And also we're going to, discuss the salt water and other symbolism, the shank bone. But in the Mishnah, which only has a little bit about a Seder, you just have these 3 things. So it is a myth. So actually Passover, if you read the Torah carefully, it actually seems like it's 2 separate holidays. Chag HaPesach, and Pesach means passing over, but it also means the Paschal lamb that's sacrificed. And then Chag HaMatzot, so where you are obligated to eat matzah. So the issue with eating matzah is you are not only obligated not to eat chametz, that's one commandment, but there's also an affirmative mitzvah to eat matzah. And you'll see that actually when we say the blessing over the matzah. So what I would say is, if for health reasons you shouldn't eat wheat, as you probably know, health concerns override all the other commandments except for 3. So there's no question that you shouldn't eat something that would affect your health. So
They have oat matzah now.
yeah, you can eat oat matzah, but
And
that
there's
is not halachically matzah. So technically, eating oat matzah doesn't fulfill your obligation to
That
eat
was my
matzah,
question.
and you technically should not say the blessing. You would say is just a motzi. You wouldn't say the mitzvah blessing. We'll get to that in a second.
Wait, is oat hamotzi or is oat mizonot?
Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be mezonot. Yes. So then, we talk about the matzah, and I always like to mention this. We when we talked about the 3 matzahs, we say halach ma'anya. It's the bread of affliction, and it's the bread that slaves eat. It's pretty poor bread, and so it reminds us of affliction. And then the matzah is transformed into the bread of freedom, that we didn't have time to wait for it to rise. And you can question the reasonableness of that whole story, but the tradition is that the bread of affliction becomes freedom, and the whole backstory of Seders are oppression and affliction become freedom, and spiritual growth. And we have the maror, embitterment, and a couple of people dressed up. And then we say a prayer of thanksgiving, which is Hallel, and that goes on for several. It's not a short prayer. We actually say some at this point. We say some after the meal, and then we say a blessing over the second cup of wine, and then we actually wash our hands. And at this point in time, we're washing our hands to fulfill a mitzvah. So as you glance at I'll glance at the transliteration. We say a blessing, not only Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, but we add Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, who has made us holy or has sanctified us with his commandments and commands us. So that is a mitzvah blessing that we say before we do a mitzvah. And then we're going to eat matzah, and there are 2 blessings we say on the matzah. One is just because it's bread, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And the second one has that phrase, Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. So matzah actually is 2 things. It's bread, so it gets the blessing for bread, but it also gets the blessing for fulfillment of a mitzvah. And maror is also commanded, so we have a mitzvah blessing, which ends with eating maror, al achilat maror. And then Hillel said you put matzah with the maror, and it looks like there's some charoset in there, and make a sandwich. And as somebody mentioned, there are lots of different, not only recipes for charoset, but even names for what charoset is. And then we eat the meal, which is shulchan orech. It may sound like shulchan aruch. The name of the Code of Jewish Law is the prepared table. And this is, I think, actually, I wish I had one of my Hebrew scholars on there. Orech probably means a table that is prepared. I think that may be in the passive, but I'm actually not even sure. But anyway, same idea. And here are some international forms. I guess these are different forms of charoset, or just different traditional foods for different cultures. And here's just a bunch of images, from Amsterdam 768, of folks eating the Seder meal, including, this looks like Korea, 1953. So you have chaplains, and lots of images. And then, interesting, I think you may know that the laws of kashrut for Passover are very stringent, and they are so stringent that you actually have separate plates and utensils for Passover. And so here are some examples of I guess these are terms. So Yiddish Pesach. Let's see. Yeah, this actually says. Well, I don't know what that says. This I think is like Pesach. Anyway, so different plates. Here's the afikomen breaking that we saw, relating to making either a hey or a yud, and you know God's name is Yud Hey Vav Hey, so that's sort of one of the things going on. And we have another cup of wine, and we recite grace, and it goes on and on and on, and Shabbat you get more, and it keeps going on, and then we get to the third cup, and then we talk about Eliyahu Hanavi. I don't think I have Eliyahu Hanavi songs, but the reason Elijah shows up is Elijah traditionally is thought to be bringing the Messiah with him. And so we sing, it's actually not translated. Well, it says, we welcome Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu HaTishbi, Elijah the Tishbite, Elijah the Gileadite, Bimhera v'yameinu, speedily and in our days, Yavo Aleinu, may he come to us in Mashiach ben David, with the Messiah, the son of David. So Passover very much is looking forward to the final redemption, understood to be the arrival of the Messiah. So we hope that Elijah will come. And of course, you know that there's a tradition of having a separate cup of wine for Elijah. And the origin of that tradition actually goes to the idea whether we should be drinking a fifth cup of wine. And the rabbis have an argument about it, and they can't make up their minds. So they say, we'll wait till Elijah comes with the Messiah, and they will tell us whether or not to drink that last cup of wine. And then something you don't see a lot in Reform Seders, right after the cup of Elijah, is a request, a prayer, to pour out your wrath on the nations that have not recognized you, God. You'll pursue them with anger and eradicate them from under the skies of the Lord. And then another Hallel, which actually goes on and on. And here's another one. There's a lot of music stuff, and as they suggest, I'm going to skip to a little over 5 minutes in, so you can hear this beautiful duet. And they're singing this song from the narrow spaces I called God, Min Hamitzar Karat. So that's a taste of that music. Well, let's see if I can get it down.
What
And
is
then
the instrument she's playing?
I think it's a oops, let's see if I can get. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's an oud, but I'm not sure. Anybody know? It looks simpler than the one he's playing, but it makes a really interesting sound. I don't know. Fourth cup of wine. And then we, of course, at the end, sing L'Shana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim. And then there's another song. I'm actually even eliminating some songs. Adir Hu. About rebuilding his house, rebuilding the temple. And that goes on for a while. And then the tradition is starting with the second night of Passover, you actually count the Omer. You count the 49 days between Passover and Shavuot, because Passover is very much linked to Shavuot. And, I always point out that when Moses goes before Pharaoh, quoting God, saying, Shalach et ami, let my people go, Moses always adds, so that we may go worship God in the mountain. And, some details change, 3 days and so on. But the purpose of freedom is not the absence of someone to serve or report to. The purpose of freedom is instead of serving human gods, you're serving the God of Israel. So we literally count the days between Passover and Shavuot, because Shavuot commemorates the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, and there's all kinds of Kabbalistic thoughts on the 7x7 matrix of counting the days of counting the Omer. Omer is a unit of wheat. In temple times, you would bring a Omer of wheat as an offering each night. I think for the evening offering for the Omer. Erwin.
I would like to ask you, could you tell me what is the difference between the matzah, what the Torah mentions in Exodus bowl, and what we are reading at Pesach?
The matzah that Exodus mentions
In a Parsha bowl.
and Parsha Bo, I know that's when Moses goes before Pharaoh, but I don't remember that
Yeah,
matzah.
because it mentions matzah, eating matzah or something
So
like that.
matzah is mentioned quite often. In our Saturday morning study, we're talking about lots of offerings that were made at the temple, and it is routine in those offerings to have matzah, to have unleavened bread. And it's a symbol of purity. I don't remember specifically where in Parsha Bo
Is
it's
that
mentioned.
when they're making the offering, is that the same kind of matzah? Because I know when I get the matzah from Chabad, that looks completely different than the matzah what you buy at
Yes.
Ralph.
Yes. So the
matzah?
sorry.
Shmura matzah?
Yes,
Yes. So it's a very good question. Matzah is made from one of the 5 grains. No, I can't remember if it's 5 grains or 7.
5.
Sorry, 5.
It's 5.
Okay. So you make it, and then you have to fully cook it 18 minutes or less from the time you mix it with water. So the matzah you buy in boxes, and it's very routine, is matzah made in machines. So you can make a lot of it quickly. The round matzah is handmade matzah. Okay. The term shmura, forgive me, it means guarded, like someone is shomer Shabbos. It's someone who guards the Sabbath. Matzah shmura means guarded matzah. What is being guarded? From the time the wheat is harvested, it is sealed with a rabbinic seal, and it remains under rabbinic supervision all throughout the cooking process. So
Okay.
it's subject to a higher standard of kashrut than ordinary machine-made matzah. Machine-made matzah, a mashgiach will examine the machines, they will examine the cleaning technique, but they won't necessarily examine the wheat from the time it's harvested.
Yeah, but and also I don't know who told me, but maybe it's just a story, Baba Maisha, that also the difference is that the Ralph, the boxes, the modern matzah has 72 little holes in it.
Oh,
and,
no, I never heard that. I'll just say I
that's
never
what-
heard that, and I would be shocked if that's the case.
Yeah, but why are the little holes in that?
The little holes are in there. Actually, I have a great joke I can tell about that afterwards. I'll try
Okay.
to restrain myself. The holes are there so it cooks quickly. You want it to
Oh,
be
I
fully
see.
cooked within 18 minutes. You're talking about the perforations.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So they are there so the matzah is able to cook thoroughly in less than 18 minutes.
Because the shmur matzah doesn't have holes in it.
No, it's handmade, and you know, in, I don't know, 17 minutes, they take it out of the oven.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
You're welcome. Okay, another one, we have a bunch of different versions of this song is Echad Mi Yodea, who knows one? So it's one of these ones that you say who knows one? You know, one is Hashem, Echad Eloheinu, Echad is our God, Sheba Shamayim Uvaretz in the heavens and the earth. Two are the tablets Moses brings, and then you say one is Hashem and so on. Three are the papas. That's very funny. The patriarchs, Avotenu. The four. Four are the matriarchs. Five are the books of Torah. Six are the books of Mishnah. 7 days of the week. 8 days before a baby boy's brit milah, circumcision. 9 are the months before a baby's born. 10 are the commandments. 11 are the stars in Joseph's dream. 12 are the tribes of Israel. 13 are the attributes of God that are mentioned in the Torah. And so here's a bunch of different examples of that. First, Bukharian, Judeo-Tajik, which I know nothing about. So you get a little flavor for that. Now here is Syrian Judeo-Arabic with our two folks. I could probably make this bigger. Right.
But this is, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the last few songs, where I'll do the first few stanzas and then the last few stanzas, because again, if I did them all, we'd be here till Pesach. So, min ya'alam u min yadri, Allah Rab al-Mijali. And those of you at home would like to sing along, the refrain at the end of every verse is Allahu, Allahu, la
Whoops, sorry. I'm letting somebody in.
illa illahu. من يعلم ومن يدري على رب المجلي الدار الواحد واحد يلي خلانا الله الله لا اله الا هو من يعلم ومن يدري على رب المجلي الدين يتنن اثنين مسوارا واحد يلي خلانا الله الله لا اله الا هو من يعلم ومن يدري على رب المجاني الدين ثلاثة يباتنا واثنين مسوار واحد يلي خلنا الله الله لا إله إلا هو.
Okay, and now here is Ladino. Ladino, folk language really of the Sephardic Jews, and as you will hear, it is a lot of Spanish in Ladino.
Baruch Shemo, quien supiese y entendiese, alabar a Dios querese, ¿cuáles son los tres? Tres nuestros padres son, dos Moshe y Aarón, uno es el Criador, Baruch o Baruch Shemo, quien supiese y entendiese, alabar a Dios querese, ¿cuáles son los cuatro? Cuatro madres de Israel, tres nuestros padres son, dos Moshe y Aarón, uno es el Criador, Baruch o Baruch Shemo. Quien supiese y entendiese, alabar a Dios querese, ¿cuáles son los cinco? 5 libros de la Torah, 4 madres de Israel, 3 nuestros padres son, 2 Moshe y Aarón, uno es el Criador, Baruch hu, Baruch Shemo.
So I think you can hear a little bit of Hebrew and a lot of Spanish going on there, particularly if you know some Spanish. And now we get back to our Yiddish couple for Who Knows One.
I think he said two are Moses and Aaron.
Yes.
Rather than,
Yeah,
It
oh yeah,
was
yeah. The other one was the tablets. Let's see what I had there. Yes, you're right. Yes, he said Moses and Aaron. Two of the tablets Moshe brought. Yeah, okay. And I don't know whether that's a different tradition or yeah, I don't know. I'm glad. That's good for picking that up. Nice.
Oh, bye.
Okay, some Yiddish. Okay. And then, of course, we have a wonderful little story about beating a goat to death. I actually wrote a version of this. I don't know if I've ever done it for you. That goes to how much is that gotcha in the window? And you can kind of guess the rest. But so this is the story of the goat. And I don't have my notes with me on this, but the different animals and different things represent the different enemies of Israel that arose to conquer Israel, and one conquered the other. So, first you have a little goat that my father bought for 2 zuzim. The 2 zuzim, my understanding, is the 2 tablets of the law. And then a cat ate the goat, then a dog bit the cat, and then a stick beat the dog, and fire burned the stick, and water quenched the fire, and an ox drank the water, and the shochet slaughtered the ox, and the angel of death slaughtered the shochet, and the Holy One is victorious over them all. So here is Judeo-Arabic. Oh, I have a note to go to 120.
واحد جدي واحد جدي واحد جدي واحد جدي اللي اشترى لي أبي بالمصريتين واحد جدي واحد جدي وأجت القطة وأكلت الجدي اللي اشترى لي أبي بالمصريتين واحد جدي.
So you get the feel for that. One word that I recognize, we said like the Holy One, blessed is he. The Arabic for blessed is Mubarak. You remember there was a president of Egypt named Mubarak, and when you wish someone like a blessed Ramadan, you'd say Ramadan Mubarak, and you see the word Baruch in Mubarak, Mivarach. So again, Arabic, as you may know, and Hebrew are quite similar. So I was trying to find an example where I can point out those things. Okay, and now here's a Yiddish Chad Gadya. And so I know some Yiddish, not much. I know that a goat is a tzigale, and a maisa mit a tzigale. A maisa, you've probably heard the term bubbe maisa, which maisa actually in Hebrew and in Yiddish means a story. So a maisa mit a tzigale. And here we go. Let me get There's certainly upbeat in the Yiddish songs. So now here is Judeo-Tajik of Chad Gadya, and I don't know hardly any of these words, except it says Hakadosh. See there, let's see.
یکی بوزغلا یکی بوزغلا آنچه می‌خرید پدر به دو تنگه
جان بوزغله جان بوزغله جان بوزغله جان بوزغله جان بوزغله جان بوزغله
و بیامد پیشک و بیخورد به بوزغلا آنچه می‌خرید به در به دو تنگه
جان بوزغله جان بوزغله جان بوزغله جان بوزغله
This is Ladino, the Spanish Hebrew. And those of you who know Spanish will definitely recognize some of the words.
Un cavretico che lo merco mi padre
por dos levanim, por dos levanim. Vino el gato y comió el cabretico que lo mercó mi padre por dos levanim, por dos levanim.
y vino el perro y que mordió el gato si se me comió el cabretico que lo mercó mi padre
Por dos levanim, por dos levanim.
And here's Happy Passover and lots of different Jewish.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't want to cough in your ears. So again, if you go to the Jewish Language Project, I think it's jewishlanguages.org. There's a lot of material. You can follow them, and they're you follow them on Facebook. At least once a week, they come up with some interesting Jewish language material. And here's more information. And then, as I mentioned, there's a lot of omitted stuff in here, and there's an Afikoman escape room, which I really don't know anything about. But I will stop sharing. Any comments or thoughts? I hope you enjoyed it. It's not the usual thing that we do. I do want to mention that I will not be here next week. Actually, Sonia's getting a new hip next week. So I will be caring for her and not focusing on anything else. But hopefully she and I will both be doing well after that. So we should have a pretty regular schedule going on. So thank you for coming, and a little while before Pesach, but I hope you enjoyed this sort of Passover warm-up. And I do recommend that series on Netflix about Moses. I'm actually thinking of maybe doing a series on the life of Moses and looking at Torah portions, not so much to focus on the teachings, but sort of the narrative of Moses's life. Moses is a super interesting character. You know, a lot of what I saw on Netflix was Midrash, which I'd never heard of. And the Midrashim are interesting. And then surprisingly, the most often mentioned person in the Quran is Moses. So there's a lot of Quranic material about Moses. And I think a lot of that comes actually from Midrash as well. So maybe we'll do that. So anyway,
Stay
thank you.
away from Sonia. Don't get her sick before the operation.
Yeah, she's actually caught my cold.
Oh, shit.
So
Darn.
yeah, yep, not good. But
Yeah,
hopefully,
actually, you need to do COVID tests because they don't want people going into the hospital with a
yeah,
cold until they're sure it's not COVID.
that's actually a very good idea. I have plenty of tests. Thank you. Okay, so thank you all, and we'll see you Saturday, Monday, whenever, Wednesday, not Wednesday, but we'll see you when we see you.
Will
So
we see you Monday?
yeah,
Some-
yes, I
this
should.
Monday's okay?
Yes, should be around on Monday. I don't remember
The
what I'm
8th?
doing on Monday. Let's see if I have a note. That would be the 8th.
We didn't finish the article.
Oh, we didn't finish the article. Yeah, plus I want to, so the article was about the Masoretic text, how the Bible came to be, the Bible that we have, and then discussion both of vowels, but I also want to give examples of trope from different traditions. So the way trope is sung in Morocco, and there's even a separate system in Casablanca that's different from the rest of Morocco, and that's really interesting. So trope is interesting in and of itself, both as a guide to singing and also as a having grammatical value when you're translating text and you're wondering where should I be putting a period. That's pretty important in English. And since the biblical text is not punctuated, but the trope actually has two different symbols that equal a period grammatically. So I find that interesting. Okay, so thank you all, and we'll see you when we see you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.